Hello. Today is the 6th of February 2023, and I just thought of something I wanted to systematically, thinking it out loud, which to me is, talking to a camera. Anyways, this bit is going to be called the impossible triangle. The impossible triangle means that the Christian definition of God as a all-powerful, all-knowing, all-good figure. That's the three, at least as far as I know, the three qualities of God. He's all-powerful. He has the power to do anything. He's all-knowing. He knows everything. How things is going, a situation, everything. And he's all good, which means that he's gonna, if he could, or he would do the good thing. Like he would make things better. So that's the three qualities of God, at least defined by Christianity. I'm just saying that is an impossible triangle because it is impossible for all three things to coexist at the same time for God, for anything, based on the current world we live in. So first of all, let me have a little bit of a lecture on the general audience, which is on the topic of logic. I feel like when you're arguing with a lot of people, you're not arguing on the same ground because they actually disagree, or they're stupid enough to not know some fundamental things that you think should be common knowledge, like logic. I'm not talking about all logic here. Just in this case, well, first of all, the burden of proof thing. The burden of proof lies with the party who's making a positive claim. In this case, well, actually, if someone is agreeing with this principle of logic, they wouldn't be Christians or any religious believers at all, because the burden of proof lies on someone who's making the claim that there is a God. They have to prove that there's a God, otherwise it stays untrue. Because these days you see a lot of those claims saying, hey, why don't you just prove that God does not exist? Otherwise, it exists by default. Those motherfuckers. It's like you cannot reason with those kind of people. Some of them know that they're being unreasonable, being illogic. Some of them don't even know. So just to reiterate, the burden of proof of proving something lies on the person who's making the claim. He or she or it or whatever has the responsibility to prove the claim. So actually by that one alone, Christian religious in general should not exist, because nobody can systematically prove that their God is real. And I'm saying that a story you heard from some book or someone or something can simply explain by the large number law. The basically coincidence does not count as proof. All right, someone struck by lightning right after he stole a bag of rice is not proof that God exists. I'm just saying, it's much more complicated than that. But basically, you cannot just ask someone else to disapprove your belief, otherwise it stays untrue. No, that's not how it works. And second of all, is that examples and isolated incidences does not equal to probability, or does not support the theory by itself. That's I know it's very effective to use that in a debate, you throw in 10 things that's bad about something, but usually that gives people the impression that that thing's really bad, or really good, depends on how you argue it. But it does not systematically prove something just with isolated incidences. It should be, examples or instances should always be there to support statistical data. Let's say, how do you argue climate change is real? All right, stupid people would argue it this way. The 10 most hottest years happened in the last 15 years. Wow, that's very alarming, right? it seems that the only reason to explain that the hottest 10 years in human history happened in the last 15 years is because that the temperature is slowly rising, climate is changing. But that's just an example of the theory. You should give statistics, how the trend is going, percentage-wise, standard deviations, or whatever, Examples and isolated incidences should only be there to support your statistical data, not the other way around. You should throw out the statistical data first, and then you explain it with some, vivid examples. Like, for example, homicide rate of New York City is jumped up from 8% to 10% in the last year, and then you give the numbers in examples, like, we've seen 20 or more examples of crimes happening from this date to that date, and then there's this very infamous murder of who, and then blah blah blah. So if you just throw in those 200 and the infamous murder of someone, does not really count, because if without talking about the percentages of the overall data, it could be just inconsequential to the big data. Think about it. One murder in a village is a lot, and a small city is, in a big city is nothing. All right, so how come one incident, can have different effects here? Because you're missing the statistical data. All right, that's the two things I want to have it clear. And I feel like if someone's already in agreement with those two things I just mentioned, the burden of proof and the isolated incidents thing, they wouldn't be even having the notion that God is real. But whatever. Just wanted to put it out there. Let's begin the real stuff. So how do you disapprove the triangle? How do you make the triangle impossible? The three things: the Almighty, the All-Powerful, the All-Knowing. You do it this way: you pick two of them, and you find examples to disapprove that it's possible to have the third one also there. I'm talking about, like, because the theory is that he's all-knowing, all-powerful, and all-good, right? So all I have to do is find examples to disprove that. All I have to do is find rebuttals. All right? I don't have the responsibility to prove in every scenario he's not all-good, all-powerful, all-knowing. I just have to find examples of him not being all of those three things at once to disapprove that theory, because that's the theory he's making. He's all-powerful, all-knowing, and all-good at all times. All right, so the first item, we pick all-powerful and all-knowing, right? So let's say there's all-powerful, which means he or she can accomplish anything if he wanted, and all-knowing, right? Which means that he knows something. So you cannot say, he didn't do that because he's he doesn't know. He's all-knowing. So how do you find rebuttals in this criteria? Well, just had to find horrible things that happened, right? Wars, for example. The wars between Russia and Ukraine, for example, it cost hundreds of thousands of soldiers dying, and people lost their homes, and they're starving to death. Whatever. That's undeniably a misery. Anyone would agree to that. So if there's a God and is all-powerful, which means that he can make these miseries go away, and is all-knowing, which means that he knows that these miseries are happening, why doesn't he just make it all go away if he's all good? Which means it's not all good. At least in this case, he's not all good because he has the power and knowledge that these people are suffering, and he does not make that go away. Okay, right? There are numerous examples of this. And actually, you can use this example for all three categories, but let's use a different one. Let's say for the second rebuttal, the God is all-powerful, he's all-good. So can he be all-knowing? His all-powerful means that he has the ability to change everything, to make anything happen, anything unhappen, whatever. He's all-good, which means that his actions will lead to better results compared to the current situation. So let's think of some example where a situation could be made for the better, and you know, but he's not being done. All right. Actually, I think it'll be more. Oh shit! This fucking car. This car just. Anyway, let's take the Russian-Ukraine war for example. All right, the Russian-Ukraine war can definitely be improved better. You know, there's definitely good could be done there. I don't think anyone could argue that. Oh, actually, this is the best situation in this situation. You know, if you just want war to stop, there's actually more damage being done somewhere else you don't see. No. You don't have to say that. There's definitely something better to be done at war. You know, than war. All right, there's something better to be done, and there's something better could be done. You know, if God is all powerful, so he must have not know what's going on. That's the only conclusion. He cannot be all knowing with this Russian-Ukraine war situation if he's you know, all powerful and all good. Now the last one, if God is all knowing and is all good, which means that he knows the Russia-Ukraine war situation and he wanted to make it for the better, to change the situation for the better. So why does he do it? The only explanation is that he's not good. He's just wimpy. You know, he's not mighty. He's wimpy. So you see how the impossible triangle is you know, is impossible. Actually, this applies to almost anything that is, you know, have a better solution. He's not all three things at once. And because Christian books claimed that it's all three things at once, and the theory is like that, which means the books are lying. Actually, you know, it's. I would rather be, you know, the theory that, you know, the Christianity religion would be much more believable if they, you know, use the Old Testament or something. I believe there's a version that where God is like all powerful, is all knowing, but it's not all good. At least not by human standard. Like, you know, he can do all those things to punish you, to scare you, or something to make his grand plan. That was actually more believable. It's still like bullshit, because nothing would change if you just take God out of the equation. Like, you know, it doesn't change anything, but still, it makes more sense. Like, God is this powerful being, very powerful, all-knowing, almighty, but he's like, you know, just a fucking player. He toys with you, and, you know, instead of really want to help you. But in that case, the theory is more believable, but people would be less willingly to believe it, because they would rather believe a God that is all good. I think that's where the problem is. They would rather believe a God that is all good, rather than believe a God that is not all good, but actually more real. You know, Christianity made a lot of efforts to make God more appealing, and at the same time stripped away his you know, credibility, in my opinion. So yeah, that's it. You know, all right, I'm almost home. Talk to you soon.